Saint of the day, Saint Ignatius of Loyola. Born Inigo Lopez de Loyola in 1491, the man known as Ignatius of Loyola entered the world in Loyola, Spain. At the time, the name of the village was spelled Loyola, hence the discrepancy. Inigo came of age in Azapetia in northern Spain. Loyola is a small village at the southern end of Azapetia. Inigo was the youngest of 13 children. His mother died when he was just 7 and then was raised by Maria de Guerin, who was the wife of a blacksmith. His last name Loyola was taken from the village of his birth. At the age of 16, he began a short period of employment working for Juan Velasquez, the treasurer of Castile. By the time he was 18, he became a soldier and would fight for Antonia Manrique de Lara, Duke of Najera and Viceroy of Navarre. Seeking wider acclaim, he began referring himself as Ignatius. Ignatius was a variant of Inigo. The young Ignatius also gained a reputation as duelist. According to one story, he killed a Moor with whom he argued about the divinity of Jesus. Ignatius fought in several battles under the leadership of Duke of Najera. He had a talent for emerging unscathed despite participating in many battles. His talents earned him promotions and soon he commanded his own troops. In 1521, while defending the town of Pamplona against French attack, Ignatius was struck by a cannonball in the legs. One leg was merely broken, but the other was badly mangled. To save his life and possibly his leg, doctor performed several surgeries. There were no anesthetic during this time, so each surgery was painful. Despite their best efforts, Ignatius' condition deteriorated. After suffering for a month, his doctors warned him to prepare for death. On June 29, 1521, on the feast of Saints Peter and Paul, Ignatius began to improve. As soon as he was healthy enough to bear it, one part of one leg was amputated, while painful spared his recovery. During this time of bodily improvement, Ignatius began to read whatever books he could find. Most of the books he obtained were about the lives of saints and Christ. These stories had a profound impact on him and he became more devout. One story in particular influenced him, the Vita Christi, the life of Christ. The story offers commentary on the life of Christ and suggested a spiritual exercise that required visualizing oneself in the presence of Christ during the episodes of his life. The book would inspire Ignatius' own spiritual exercises. As he lay bedridden, Ignatius developed a desire to become a working servant of Christ. He especially wanted to convert non-Christians. Among his profound realization was that some thoughts brought him happiness and others sorrow. When he considered the difference between these thoughts, he recognized that two powerful forces were acting upon him. Evil brought him unpleasant thoughts, but God brought him happiness. Ignatius discerned God's call and began a new way of life, following God instead of man. By the spring of 1522, Ignatius had recovered enough to leave bed. On March 25, 1522, he entered the Benedictine monastery, Santa Maria de Monasterit. Before an image of the Black Madonna, he laid down his military garments. He gave his other clothes away to a poor man. His time in prayer and contemplation helped him to understand himself better. He also gained a better understanding of God and God's plan for him. 10 months he spent between hospital and cavern were difficult for Ignatius. He suffered from doubt, anxiety, and depression, but he also recognized that these were not from God. Ignatius began recording his thoughts and experience in a journal. This journal would be useful later for developing new spiritual exercises for tens of thousands of people who would follow him. These exercises remain invaluable today and still widely practiced by religious and laity alike. Ignatius realized he needed to obtain a complete education if he wanted to convert people. Returning to Barcelona, Ignatius attended a grammar school filled with children to learn Latin and other beginning subjects. He was blessed with a great teacher during this time, Master Geronimo Ardevol. After completing his primary education, Ignatius traveled to Alcala, then Salamanca, where he studied at the university. In addition to studying, Ignatius often engaged others in lengthy conversation about the spiritual matter. Ignatius was questioned 3 times by the Inquisition, but he was always exonerated. Ignatius eventually decided he needed more education, so he traveled north seeking better schools and teachers. He was 38 years old when he entered the College of Saint Barbe of the University of Paris. This education was very structured and formalized. Later, Ignatius would be inspired to copy this model when establishing schools. The ideas of prerequisites and the class levels would arise from Jesuit schools, which were heavily inspired by Ignatius' experience in Paris. While at school in Paris, Ignatius roomed with Peter Faber and Francis Xavier. Faber was French and Xavier was Basque. The men became friends and Ignatius led them in spiritual exercises. Other men soon joined their exercises and became followers of Ignatius. The group began to refer as themselves as the Friends in the Lord, an apt description. Pope Paul III received the group and approved them as an official religious order in 1540. The band attempted to elect Ignatius as their first leader, but he declined, saying he had not lived a worthy life in his youth. He also believed others were more experienced theologically. The group insisted, however, and Ignatius accepted the role as their first leader. They called themselves the Society of Jesus. Some people who did not appreciate their post dubbed them Jesuits in an attempt to disparage them. While the name stuck by virtue of their good work, the label lost its negative connotation. Ignatius imposed a strict, almost military rule on his order. This was natural for the man who spent his youth as a soldier. It might be expected that such rigor would dissuade people from joining, but it had the opposite effect. The order grew. Society of Jesus soon found its niche in education. Before Ignatius died in 1556, his order established 35 schools and boasted 1,000 members. The order was responsible for much of the work of stopping the spread of Protestant Reformation. The society advocated the use of reason to persuade others and combat heresy. Today, Society of Jesus is known for its work in educating the youth around the world. Several universities have been founded in the name of Ignatius and in traditional Jesuit spirit. The Jesuits also performed many other important works around the globe. Ignatius passed away on July 31, 1556 at the age of 64. He was beatified by Pope Paul V on July 27, 1609 and canonized on March 12, 1622. His feast day is July 31st. He is the patron saint of the Society of Jesus, soldiers, educators, and education.